Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our session today with ASG and ZIA, where we'll be covering privacy-aware governance. And this session will focus specifically on some use case spotlights around discovering and managing sensitive and personal information across shared drives as well as content systems. I'm joined today by Ryan McVeigh with ZIA. Ryan, say hello to everybody and give us a little background on your role at ZIA.
Thank you, Greg. At ZIA, I am Managing Partner and Vice President of Sales. So I'm responsible ultimately for our partnership and relationship with ASG and bringing these solutions to market.
Thanks, Ryan. Nice to be teaming up with you again here today. My name is Greg Wilson. I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm the Director of Content Strategies at ASG Technologies. So to start us off, Ryan, I'd like to hear from you a little bit on how you would define privacy-aware governance for our audience here today.
But what does it mean to be privacy-aware? And I think that's really important. So we'll just boil that down to two things. You typically will want to care about personally identifiable information, PII, or data that you might otherwise define as sensitive within your organization. And so we've decided that terminology is privacy aware. And if you can apply governance to that data or information within your business, then you've accomplished, if you will, a privacy aware governance strategy. So think about that from the concept of the dark data that would reside within your enterprise and an ability to remove that risk, right? You can discern what do I have and thus make a decision on how I might act on it based on those definitions. We historically might have done that through more traditional ways of a search, right? Something like, let me provide a regular expression and find a social security number based on a 3-2-4 pattern of digits. And we've learned over the years that while that works fabulously, it's insufficient. It's not complete. And so the solutions that we're bringing to market here today are more mature, more robust, and we'll share more about that as we go through the rest of the presentation. Back to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Ryan. A few things I'd add in there, just in a lot of conversations that we have with clients, is thinking about this as de-risking the dark data. In other words, the privacy data that resides across your enterprise that you may not be managing or aware of. And then also, I think what really led us down this path is really coming to the realization that regex, or regular expressions, as well as metadata, just really is not enough to get your hands around all of that sensitive data within an organization, especially and specifically where we're talking about that information residing in documents and records, which we're really here to talk about today. So for the spotlights that we'll be walking through today, I just wanted to call out a few of our customers that we'll be looking at in the projects that we've worked on with them, Pilot Flying J, and then also a leading investment bank that's a multinational organization for financial services and banking. So the challenge that they were experiencing with discovering and classifying and correlating personal information. They realized that there was a need to move away from the manual processes that they had in place. And with the petabytes of information and millions and billions of documents that they already have floating through their organizations, they really needed some help in a way to automate this with AI as well as machine learning. Unstructured content that wasn't properly identified and managed has become a real nuisance and really required a lot of work to get their arms around this. And if we think about this, we're talking about documents and records that end users put out on shared drives for access. They maintain them in content repositories, much like ASG's Mobius Content Services platform, and then also within collaborative systems as well, which could be Microsoft, Box, and others. Even once organizations have been able to identify where sensitive information resides within documents and records, it's still a huge uphill task for them to be able to take action upon those documents. And there was a huge need in both of these organizations that we worked with to automate the processes across the entire governance process. So not just the discovery side and the classification side, but also being able to apply redaction, to be able to apply event-based retention, to have a more automated approach for legal holds and so forth. What I want to do is walk through the process flow that we've worked through with both of these organizations. For these particular projects, the focus was essentially around shared drives and also the content repository that they had in place with Mobius. On identifying this information, we're able to perform e-discovery here. And on the discovery side, it's first being able to scan through all the documents and records, let's say, that are on shared drives, identifying sensitive information, and doing this in a way that it's not just tied to regular expressions, but there's in-depth algorithms that are applied here, and also being able to look at this from a machine learning aspect so that we get smarter and smarter as we go through this process. Correlate information so we can start grouping the document types that we're running into, And then also in this process, being smart to identify duplicate and redundant data through the same correlation approach, as well as not this just being a point in time, realizing that new documents are coming out to shared drives continuously, and to Mobius as well, that there's continuous management that's needed around that. And then as we think about e-discovery back into Mobius, we build integration back into our REST API layer so that we can not only look through metadata that's residing in the database, but actually scan through these documents and records that are managed within Mobius as well.
Right. There's a lot of interesting information that you can gain. And as an individual, as a person, right, that is kind of obvious to you if you were to do this by hand. Obviously, at scale, that's not feasible, right? So we rely on technologies like neural networks, like AI and machine learning, right? The buzzwords, if you will, but they really do work and help utilize those things that might be obvious to you as an individual with regards to the proximity of that data to the system in which it is integrated to and so on and so forth, to make more educated decisions about what you have and what that data might represent.
From all the work that we've done up front here, from the shared drives in Mobius and discovery that takes place, a personal information report is then created that includes much of the metadata, sensitive data that has been found, as well as paths back to where it resides. And from here, we really get the opportunity to start going to the next phase of this, which is taking action and applying governance. Essentially, there's about 3 primary actions that are going to happen from here with the documents and records that have been scanned. We're either going to migrate these flagged documents so that we can have proper governance and management of them, or no action is required, or there's a need to destroy the records. When I speak of governance and the services around that, I'm talking about functionality and ability for redaction at time of retrieval. I'm talking about event-based retention, and also being able to leverage a workflow process as we move through event-based retention as well as legal holds, and also encryption at rest capabilities that make sure that if we do have bad actors that actually infiltrate your network, that we can still keep them from getting into the Mobius Content Services platform and having access to the sensitive information. Now, Ryan, as we've seen in many of these projects as well, at times there becomes a need for image capture. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. It's interesting because we've talked about discovery, and you're probably thinking, well, we've discovered and we know something about this content. And you do. You certainly at that phase of the process know something about what you've looked at. It affords you an opportunity then to, in fact, act and take a closer look at the content you have. And for example, if you have image-based data or something that isn't including a full text layer in your content or otherwise, you can take advantage of a capture technology at this phase to gain more data about your data, if you will. And that affords you opportunity to take additional actions. For example, apply redaction at the time of ingestion if your business process suggests that you would never have that non-redacted data available in your target repository. So it plays well into the governance use cases that Greg just talked about, and affords you just additional opportunity to really be knowledgeable and have insight into the data you're acting on.
The real differentiator here is the idea of permanent redaction versus conditional. And within this solution, we're able to offer both of those, which served well for the clients that we worked with on this front. In summary, as we look at some of the target benefits, we've identified and projected a 60% cost reduction in the handling of customer removal requests that come into these organizations. We're also looking at a 50% reduction in the current manual efforts that were happening around legal holds and retention processes. And this is because for many, the legal hold process was manual effort that required maintaining and keeping track of documents on shared drive. And third, but certainly not least, is this idea of a fully automated redaction process, which is policy-based, that can be applied to documents as they're being ingested into the system, and then applied at the time of retrieval or an end-user requests the document to take a look at it, and then having the full audit records around it as well.
So these were obviously differentiators that helped our customer select the solutions we were proposing. So the first one you see on the screen here is the end-to-end auditing capability, right? Which seems obvious again. However, if we're really being thorough about what we're discussing, and we've identified that personally identifying information or that sensitive data in an organization and acted upon it, it's extremely important that you have a record organizationally as to how that information has moved around your organization and how it has then ultimately participated in your records management or governance strategies within your business. We're not talking about small amounts of information. I alluded to that a moment ago, but doing some of this by hand, that's not feasible, right? These organizations have content and data and information numbers, in 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures, right? Lots and lots and lots of data. So an ability to handle scale through all ends of the application was a key differentiator for them to be able to proceed. The unified view is always important, right? Those folks who have the responsibility for implementing governance strategy definitely need a single viewpoint, or as few viewpoints as is feasible within their business to perform that function. And when information lives like this in disparate systems and is not brought up into a single point of view for the customer, you really can struggle, and it becomes difficult to be defensible. Have you actually, in fact, implemented your strategy as you've defined? Business users tend not to want to think about governance. Right, that's not their core function. Their core function is line of business focused, and yet the data that they may be interacting with will need to participate in a governance solution. And so it's important to think about how might you automate that participation in such a way that the business users can function the way they do on a day-to-day basis, without them having to necessarily choose to participate in the actual act of governance. So that automation is key. And then finally, enabling the future state of a cloud-based application, and as a service-based application, even as a possibility, was important. And so those are the key reasons that helped us earn that business, Greg.
And what comes to mind as you walk through these differentiators is also, outside of these 2 clients, all the other conversations and projects that we're taking on and working with around this. And for the audience out there, what I'd say is, we've seen these projects. We know that these are tough. These are challenging projects. But what I'd say that we see with the clients we work with is the future is here. The idea of moving away from these manual processes and automating an end-to-end solution around your governance is possible. The idea of having a unified view into your disparate systems is going to make life so much easier on everyone else. And if you're already moving towards the cloud in many ways, as many of our clients are, that definitely needs to be part of this conversation and something we can help with too. So really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.